Apparently, big stuff going on. A lot of people were talking about this. I totally missed this article when it was posted. I am going to read all the Mythic Plus portion of this interview. This is apparently a huge interview, and I'm going to give you my thoughts on it. I think there was also something else. Well, we'll get this other article up too, just because, yeah, apparently the title gives it away. But let's go ahead and read it. I don't really care about raids at this point. There might be some relevant stuff in here, but they're basically just talking about private auras. I support them. I think it would be good to have that across the board. You know, if you've heard me talk about this, I support no add-ons, but it's just not possible. Like, there's no way they can remove add-ons at this point. So yeah, this is interesting. Mythic and Mirror was probably one of the hardest raids ever created. Really interesting. But yeah, I would say that this is good for the game. I think this is healthy if you can't use add-ons to because if Blizzard designs a mechanic and then somebody creates an add-on that makes the mechanic easier, like a lot easier, that design has now been wasted, right? Like they spent hours on that. This is bad financially for them. So they have a vested interest in doing this one way or the other. But that's all I got to say about raids. Affixes have continued to be a controversial topic. They're really not, to be honest. At this point, it seems that the closer that we get to an affix that does nothing, the happier people are. That's insightful. Whoever wrote that it's true, which is sad, but it is true. Do you still think that affixes are needed to change week-to-week combat? Well, I can't wait to hear what they have to say about that. I think they still believe that right now, but maybe they don't. If so, what changes would you feel like affixes need to make in order to be more fun for players? And that's a bad way to end that question. Because people who are worried about them being fun don't understand that they're not there to be fun. The content is there to be difficult. It's called progression level content for a reason, okay? It's meant to be hard. The affixes are not there to shower you with praise when you do them right. They're just like any other mechanic in the game. If you do it wrong, you fail. That's how difficulty works. It's not there when you do it right, you get a buff. A lot of people want that. Even though I think that would be good for the game, it would yeah, anyway, let's just read what they have to say because who cares? We can rant on this all day. This has obviously been a huge topic in the community in recent weeks. It's been a huge topic within the team in recent weeks. We're far from done when it comes to the current state of beta. We're looking to roll out a couple more pretty significant changes for pretty significant swings in how we approach affixes and the Mythic Plus system. As testing continues in the upcoming weeks, I don't want to get ahead of spoiling what all those will be, but stay tuned for some forum and blog updates in the next couple beta builds. Now, we're talking about like we're close. Like this is only a couple months away now at this point, right? We got like 2 months until this expansion's out. So we're like 9 weeks away or so. It's close. This is a lot closer than you think it is. So this has to be done now. Like the fact that they're talking about this is a little worrying to me because we're out of time, man. Like you got to get this moving here. If we're talking about another 4 weeks before this is testable, it better be a fucking home run. Otherwise, it's just going to be worse. But who knows? I'm optimistic, obviously. Part of what we've been talking about is increasing divergence in the approach that Mythic Plus audience takes to the content. This is a good way. Ian, dude, I know a lot of people hate this dude for some reason. He's very intelligent. Like, I don't want to sound like I'm like fucking, bigging him up for no reason here. But I've never really heard the dude say something that isn't super insightful. And that's because he used to be one of the best players in the game. And he understands what makes the game tick from the ground up. I think a lot of the people who make the game don't understand what makes the community tick. And that's not surprising considering the community literally does things that are like antithetical to what should be good in the game. They make the game worse for themselves. They make the game harder for themselves. They make the game less fun for themselves on purpose just to pretend that they're better at it. It's really almost like parody of what a community should be at times. But he understands the game and understands the way it's played, like what it looks like to be played better than anybody else I've ever met. I read an article that was a similar situation where they were talking about the priest changes in Dragonflight beta, and he was talking about how there was a game 1 and a game 2 at this point, and the players are playing game 2, but they're designing game 1, and game 2 is this out of combat like parse culture, this above the game. We care more about what I'm doing personally than what the group's doing. All I care about is these metrics that don't have any real value from the actual like dopamine hit that WoW is trying to deliver. Like they are not designed by Blizzard, but people like sign their soul away to be able to compete within them. Blizzard's not making that game. They don't control Warcraft logs. They don't control you know, even for a long time, Raider.io score. They're trying to make the best MMORPG they can, and the community doesn't want them to do it. Like a core fundamental about MMORPGs, buffs. Buffs that increase your friend's power. This is like number one thing about an RPG, right? And Blizzard is making it, and the community is like, we don't want that, you idiots. Stop making us give each other power. We only want the power for ourselves. So it's like, how the hell do you design the game when that's how people play it? It's crazy. Anyway, we look at affixes like bolstering and raging, and for the average Mythic Plus player, to the extent that there is such a thing, is the person who is just running Mythic Plus for loot and filling out their vault row, and to just to have fun running dungeons with friends. So that's not average. That's a bad insight from him, actually. One of the worst I've read. But it's just, I think he's trying to make it sound like it's average. That's why it's in quotations. But it's not. That's not average. The average player is pugging like higher keys, right? Like nobody who does Mythic Plus just for filling out their vault role and have fun running dungeons with friends. Like who even does people do that? Does anybody do that? If you're running a Mythic 8 or whatever, we're seeing consistent participation and success rates week over week. For that audience, affixes continue to serve a valuable purpose in varying the experience week over week, slightly changing the puzzle that the groups need to solve. And that's exactly how I've always assumed they felt. That the affixes are there to make people have to be aware of what they're doing each week in a slightly different way than the previous week. And I think this is really good for the game. But he says we've heard feedback from the community that asks if they're just there to add difficulty, why are they needed? He just explained that. What? We have health and damage increases to add difficulty. And we agree the primary purposes of purposes. Wait. And we agree. This is like a typo or something. We agree the primary purposes of purposes is not. It's probably meant to be. And while we agree, the primary purpose of affixes is not just to add difficulty, it's to add variety. Okay. So that's the end of the quote, right? Why is there still more being said? That's all you need to tell people. Like, this is what I've said for years about Blizzard. Just tell people the fucking truth. If they can't handle the truth, then that's them. That's on them. Like, what can you do? If you tell them this is why the game's being designed this way and they don't like it, they're out of luck. Like, they do not make the game. The community does not make the game, and people seem to think they do. It's really making the game worse over the years. It's getting better because they're making better decisions because of what the community is saying. But at one point, like, Blizzard basically was just like, what do you want us to do? And people were like, make leveling joke mode, ruin the world, put all the difficulty in instances. Like, they just destroyed what the game was. From Kata through WoD, the game became something that it was unrecognizable from its starting point. And it's taken them all these years to write the course here, to the point where we finally get back to Dragonflight having good class design, like amazing talent ideas. Like, it's like they're actually caring about the core of the game again. It took us 20 years to get to this point. And it's all because of the community. The community steered this ship into an iceberg. And, you know, the absentee captains that are the game developers at the time were like, this is what you wanted. You know what I mean? It's like, bro, man, come on. Just make the game the best that you know how to make it. And if people don't like it, then they move on. Anyway, now for people who are playing Mythic Plus at the highest end of the system, people who have long since gotten Keystone Hero and all their teleports and are pushing potentially for the season title or to improve their personal best, the only thing they're playing for in this system is raising that bar and is raising that personal best. And so at the cutting edge of the limits of any system, when you have variations from week to week, there will be some outcomes that are more favorable than others. So he totally understands the actual problem. Again, awesome. For groups that are pushing their limits, if they realize that they are able to achieve a new best on a push week, like bursting or whatever, and the next week cycles in, and even though they could complete dungeons, they know they could not beat their absolute best this week. It makes the whole week feel dead, and it feels dead because of that affix. And who is responsible for that affix? Blizzard, the World of Warcraft team. They very rightly give the feedback that this is frustrating. That's a generous statement. This is getting in their way of enjoying the experience. We understand that, and we agree. I don't think the right answer is to remove affixes for all players. However, we are discussing some solutions that may allow players who are focused on the competitive optimization and perfect aspect of the dungeon system to have less randomness and variation in their week-over-week experience. This is something that we've seen across dungeons and other forms over the past. Going back to past expansions, dungeons like Archway or Waycrest Manor used to have different routes from week to week, or even from run to run in some cases, to vary the experience. So it felt like 4 players running the dungeon, you are exploring a dynamic environment. But we understand that if you are in an esports setting or absolutely trying to squeeze every ounce of performance out of your group, variation is unwelcome. So those are some of our broad philosophical thoughts right now, and we look forward to sharing the plans we're working on with the community in the next week or two, and continuing the conversation and getting tons of feedback. That's a heavy hitting paragraph. Very, very heavy hitting paragraph. So people were talking about it. They kind of spoiled it for me. I think a lot of people think this means they're going to remove Tyrannical and Fortified. They talked about this in the previous post that I made a video on too. It seemed like they still are not sure how they're going to handle Tyrannical and Fortified. And I think this quote kind of exemplifies that. Should Tyrannical and Fortified be removed, in my opinion? It's a tough question for me to answer out of the gate. I'd say no, but it's because of the way I play the game. I think for everybody else, the answer should probably be yes. It does make the difficulty too difficult to understand for players, and it's clearly impacting our success rate on Tyrannical weeks. Like if you haven't, I mean, fuck, I still have the goddamn sheet up. If you haven't seen our success rate on Tyrannical versus Fortified, look at this. 16% higher disband rate on Tyrannical. What is that? 14, 20, I'm terrible at math. Very low upgrade percentage compared to Fortified, okay? We have a 42% upgrade percentage on Fortified keys. 28 on Tyrannical. It's gotten to be to a point now where the players are simply not capable of doing hard bosses. But the reason I say they shouldn't remove it is because it's probably now going to fall somewhere in between, and keys are just going to be harder because of it. I don't think this is the right solution. To me, the right solution is have a weekly score. Like you said it here. He says it here. People are playing at the highest end, raising that bar, raising their personal best. What are they raising their personal best of? Mythic Plus score. He even goes on to say, like, if you realize that you're not able to achieve a new best, and that week cycles in, and then everyone, and even though they can complete dungeons, they know they could not beat their absolute best this time. It makes the whole week feel dead, and it feels dead because of the affix. This is not a problem with the affix. This is the problem with the score, right? Like, who decided that the only thing that should matter is the overall highest key you do? At one point, it didn't even matter whether it was Tyrannical or Fortified, right? At one point, your highest key, no matter that affix, was the one that gave you score. But then Blizzard, the company that Ian Hazzikostas is the mouthpiece for, changed it so you have some value to do Tyrannical and Fortified. Keep going. Like, what do you do? Why would you stop? It seems like you even already set it up this way. Like you made it, so now there's only going to be 4 affixes, potentially, right? So make there be a weekly score on top of progression score. This is an obvious, I said this since Legion. This is obvious to me. The people who only play the game for score are doing it wrong, and the system is enabling them to do it wrong. It's like only golfing on days that are sunny out. Like you can't be a professional golfer and avoid the rain. You have to be able to play well in all conditions. Just like affixes. Affixes are like weather in golf. I've been using this example for like 10 years now. Or sports in general. Play baseball out of the rain. It's a totally different environment than playing it in the rain. That's why the affixes are there. You're supposed to be good at all of them and not just only do them on the easiest one because all you care about is fucking beating off to some score shit that it shouldn't even be in the game. So this is not the insight I was hoping to hear from him, but I trust that because of his understanding of the situation and what the game looks like now, that this may be a better outcome. Like my design idea may not have been a good outcome because it's going to definitely punish people who take weeks off and it's going to make pugging harder probably. I recognize that those are faults of it, but I just don't care because it's ridiculous that the top players in the world are able to say they're the top players in the world when they literally don't even play their character multiple weeks out of the season. Like that is not a competitive attitude. That is the opposite. That's you're basically just trying to cheese your progression. But anyway, there's more, a lot, seems like a lot more. So let's keep reading. With the recent affix changes, the community has reacted to seeing bolstering and sanguine still in the rotation. These affixes seem to go against the mantra of minimizing the mechanical overlap between affixes and dungeon trash design. And that's a misunderstanding as well. What was the thought process for keeping these 7 affixes? And can we expect more changes to these affixes to make them more fun line, or are they stated to be replaced in the future? Slated. The changes that we were discussing certainly right now are pretty big swings. We're looking at this from the point of Mythic Plus is really trying to serve multiple audiences and trying to come up with a one-size-fits-all solution that has caused some problems in finding the correct solution. We're taking a step back there. What are the affixes and what are they trying to achieve week over week for the audience that is less looking to push rating and be extremely competitive? And what is the excitement when you have this new affix introduced week over week? To speak to the post that we made, I think one of the major design goals that we could try to reiterate on is more that we were trying to not create new nameplates in the gameplay source space, but we're not trying to create things that might be considered an ability or mechanic on a boss fight. You're not spawning a new ad. There's no quaking or volcanic where it feels like these mechanics are kind of just happening. The things that we wanted to focus on were things that felt more like overarching rule changes, like all trash in the dungeon behaves in this way or reacts in a way that you can plan for all that very easily. It's not something that would surprise you. You can hopefully approach the pulls differently or approach the dungeon differently to combat those affixes. That was really where we were focusing on and why we kept some of those affixes that were in those current 7 buckets. But like we said, we're taking a big step back and revisiting all that with our next iteration. So like totally confirming that like this, what we're reacting to right now may be totally different than what we just tested last week. And really well said by Morgan Day. I actually like a lot of respect for this dude too. He seems to really understand the game and what the game is and isn't. And super well said. You have total control over bolstering. All of these people who are complaining about bolstering, you guys suck, man. That's all there is to say. Like, there's a couple examples, like Everbloom recently, where it's totally unfair and it should have been changed. But it's like 99% of the time, if you die to bolstering, you just did it wrong, man. Like, it's just you're not prioritizing damage properly. The only question then is, can you do it like that and still upgrade keys? That's the question. I don't see the answer because I never try. Nobody ever tries. In the old days, there used to be a bolstering weak ore, which I still fucking have, where the highest marked target, the highest health target was marked. And you would swap from target to target with your auto attacks to guarantee that they all died evenly. This is how people used to play the game. This was 6 years ago, bro. This was 4 years ago. In BFA, people did this. Now they nerfed the fucking affix to the ground, and people say it's overpowered. Like, what, huh? People, it used to be twice as hard, maybe 5 times as hard, and people did it well, and you could upgrade keys with it constantly. And now it's easy mode. Like, it basically does fucking nothing, and it's permanent. It's not even permanent. And people act like it's unfair. That's the game we're playing now. So Ian says, again, looking at the data that is informing our decisions, there are meaningful differences in how people experience the content based on the level they're running it at. This is a stupid talking point. I really wish they didn't go about it this way. I think they're trying to make it sound like the people who are casuals are being heard, right? I do not believe that there is a meaningful amount of people out there who are running their dungeons with their friends because they're fun and that's it. Like, I don't, that you would just do zeros, right? Isn't that why they just did that? If you just want to fuck around, why are you doing timed content? Like, I don't think that there's a serious amount of players doing this. This seems disingenuous that they're using that as a point of reflection on the 2 types of the community. There's 2 types of the community, Mayas. Pugging and pushing. That's it. No matter what key you're doing, you're either pugging it or you're pushing it with a group of 5 people and you're gradually getting better as a unit, or you're pugging it and you're gradually getting better as an individual fighting against the community alongside you. That's it. There's no I do keys casually versus I do keys seriously. No, they're the same thing. It's just based on the power that you have in your character and the level you're doing. That has nothing to do with your mentality. You can do a 20, you know what I mean? Like, you can't do a 20 casually. Like, it's just not possible. So it's just about the difficulty. So you're saying it like there's different people here. There's not. There's just confusion. It's just people doing it wrong, basically. Like, if you're trying to do a 10 casually, you're doing it wrong. You have to take it serious. You always have to take it serious, no matter what level you do. Because if you don't take it serious, you're going to fail. There's a timer. You can fail the dungeon. Anyway, an affix like storming that was considered a free affix by very high-end players had a noticeable impact on their success rate in the lower ranges. He's saying that, yeah, affixes matter differently to different people, and that's true, but I don't think it's a big enough of a difference to matter. Something like busting that, again, is considered far easier than bolstering and raging in terms of key pushing at the high end, has a heavier impact on key success rates than bolstering or raging at the lower end, because the strategies that are being used are different. Like talking about Mass Dispel, presumably. So I think for players at the high end, a lot of what is fun about the system, at least as we understand it, saying he doesn't even understand it properly, is pushing their limits and enjoying really aggressive strategies to try to fight as many things at the same time and move through the dungeon as quickly as they can. And affixes that maybe feel more punitive to their particular strategies that are most effective at the high level end up being the most frustrating ones. But players who are playing at a different level, at a different meta, well said, glad you brought that up, using different approaches to the dungeons are having a totally different experience. And so that's a lot of what we're trying to navigate as we think through how to evolve Mythic Plus going forward. So Faxi and a few others in the chat said that, like, based on these comments, it makes it sound like affixes might go away at a certain level. That, just based on him saying that, I was immediately going to react to that, but I wanted to save it for this video. If they do that, that'd be awful. That'd be absolutely awful. Because that level is likely going to be high. And that means that the middle tier keys are going to be like impossible. Like imagine if it was 16, right? I've yet to even enter 16, but we're getting our ass kicked in 15s constantly. And then all of a sudden 16 is way easier. Like how are they going to do that? That's not a good idea. I could see though that the affixes, like they already started thinking about it like this. Like the affixes stopped scaling past 10 or whatever for a long time now. People still complain about it, I guess. It just depends on the affix. I think what you have here and in this comment should be said. The imbalance of affixes is the bigger problem here. You designed a bad set of affixes. That's all you can say. The individual affixes are fine, but when you compare them, they're not balanced at all. He basically even says that in the article, and it's like really unfortunate because the system could have been great, but the people that you're talking about here, like at least as we understand it, which is really funny, pushing their limits and employing really aggressive strategies to try to fight as many things at the same time and move through the dungeon as quickly as they can. Do you know why they're doing that? Like is it not obvious? Like they're doing that because of Mythic Plus score, right? If there was no Mythic Plus score, do you think the people that are doing those keys at that level would be doing them? When there was challenge mode, you can go back and look. There's still videos on Mop and Wad challenge modes. There's like one group in the world trying to do that shit. Literally nobody gives a fuck. Even though it's the same system, it was even easier because there was no affixes and the gear scaled. It was easier to be the best at it possible, to maximize your character out to the nth degree because you could reset the fucking dungeon when you failed, and nobody did it. Do you know why nobody did it? Because there's no incentives there. The reason people are doing this shit now is because the incentive to get to be the highest score on a website that's outside the video game turns them on. Like it makes them play the game. So you got to shift the incentive. Like it's so obvious to me. Am I crazy? Am I the only one thinking this? Just shift the incentive. But I think it's too difficult. They probably would try it if it wasn't so complicated. But it's just complicated. Like how do you do the MDI and make it look like WoW? It already doesn't look like WoW. How do you do it when you have the shifting of the incentives in the way I would design them? It ruins the esport element of it. And that's good in my eyes. There shouldn't be an MDI. The MDI is not something that is representative of what Mythic Plus looks like. The Great Push is close. It's a lot better. Way better. But that still would be difficult to make happen. I think the MDI would just have to go. And I think the Great Push would still function. And you can just make it so keys... You can even do the Great Push with no affixes at that point. That maybe is a good compromise. Make the Great Push have no affixes. And then the actual in-game version, the affixes are equally valuable. So no matter the difficulty, you have to get good at all of them to get your best score for the season. Seems obvious. I mean, it's just so obvious. I don't know how... I'm surprised that that's not what they would just say outright. Anyway, and Dragonflight stops. have been used to cancel almost all casts in Mythic Plus dungeons. This has put a significant imbalance on classes with and without AoE stops, and players who use and don't use them, with the damage intake between a group who uses stops and groups who don't is massive. How do you feel about this, and are there any changes? I'm going to read Morgan Day's comment first because he's lower. Let's put it that way. It also just creates. Oh, he actually replies to what Ian says. All right, forget it. This is also something we've been talking about a bunch. The role and importance of stops in Mythic Plus is something that has kind of grown organically over the last couple of expansions. The ability to stop casts from completing is something that has always been part of WoW, but generally an enemy that was knocked back or whatever would instantly begin that cast again. You had to use a kick or counter spell to truly put it on cooldown, so they were more limited in value in the past. Yeah, why did that change? When did that start changing? I forgot that was the way it used to be. If you go back to like Classic and you took the spells from retail, you wouldn't be able to stop cast with those spells. The team has started designing specific abilities in dungeons to go on cooldown with the spell cast began, no matter what. So if you stop that cast in any manner, whether it was death gripping the mob or CCing it, death grip, good shout out, bro. He knows, Blood DK. It would go on cooldown just as it has been interrupted. That is still appropriate in some circumstances, but the increasing proliferation in dungeons is what kind of created this incredibly powerful utility that has been seen to dictate perceived optimal comps in the last couple of years. He just understands everything. Like I feel like he knows exactly what's actually happening. Yet everybody says the devs are clueless. It's so embarrassing. The dude knows exactly what's happening, bro. He's seeing it. He understands it perfectly. It's just a hard problem to solve. We've been designing War Within Dungeons to move back closer to how things used to be in that regard. Still doing it where it's appropriate, but not defaulting to have all abilities go on cooldown when the cast starts. These tools should still be tremendously powerful tools for disrupting or managing and relocating enemies in dungeons, like Death Grip, but they shouldn't be the answer to nearly every problem that you presented in a way that reduces viable comp diversity. They shouldn't be, but they're still going to be. Like, what's not clear about this answer is that it doesn't matter if the spell stops or not at times. Sometimes you just have to delay the spell. Like, there's still mobs like that you just delay the cast on, and that's good enough. Like, people just chain delay them. Whether or not it stops, that's like a pug thing. Like, if you use one stop and it stops the cast, okay, that's easy mode. But you still need to chain them. It's the problem of too many CCs in the game, not the mobs. Like, the mobs are not the problem here, in my eyes. Anyway, Morgan Day also says, it just creates a disparity between how the game works and how Mythic Plus and Dungeons worked in some cases. Spells only have a cooldown when they're kicked or when they complete their cast. That's my expectation as a player. That's how my character works. As Ian mentioned, taking a step back and essentially reevaluating, not treating that as a different experience from how the rest of the game works, also provided an opportunity for us to look at this and evaluate other things. We don't want to just make this change in a vacuum. We wanted to look at, all right, these spells that are considered must stop. What's their cast time? What's their recast time? Let's make these changes and look at how dangerous these spells are with more intentionality, because it's very easy to just have them recasting or have quick cast times when there's interrupts that are being thrown out around more commonly. And that's, you basically just said it. Thrown around more commonly. Why would you ever say that word if it's not because there's tons of them? There's just too many now. The talents added too many. Dragonflight failed in that way. The classes have access to too many of them. Anyway, obvious solutions to me. It sounds like obvious solution from get from A to B faster. Walk a straight line. Everybody knows it. Everybody sees it. Not always that easy, right? That's the way I'm looking at my solution to this. They are building an underground highway to get from A to B. Is it the best solution? We don't know yet. But the fact that they're considering building an underground highway, when you can just cut down the trees in the way from A to B, you know what I'm saying? Tells you that they are fucking all in. And that's awesome. I'm excited to see them all in, because hopefully that means that everything gets better. I don't know that these are different. I don't think these are different. I'm not going to read this post, I don't think, but I assume they're just saying that it's just like clarifying. I don't think the right answer is to remove affixes for all players. Yeah, good snippet there. Yeah, they're basically just saying the same. They just made a whole article on something that took me 30 minutes to read. That's Wowhead in a nutshell. But anyway, yeah, cool. Good, happy. Hopefully this will work out. Like I said, there's a better solution to this in my eyes, but I'm probably wrong. You know, I just do think shifting the incentives would be a better solution for everybody. But yeah, it would probably kill the top end players. like maybe some would die because like now I'm sure a lot of these guys, and this is an unfortunate truth of WoW as well, is being hardcore is like a sightseeing experience for a lot of guys. They want to do it, but is to be the hardest of core, you gotta fucking bleed for that shit, man. Like you put your life on hold. And so if every week mattered for you to be the best Mythic Plus player, I mean, that would reward the best players, the players who are the most dedicated. But it would mean the guys who right now do like 10 hours of keys a week and still compete, they're fucked. Like they're out. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Interesting. We'll see how it goes. Stay tuned because there's going to be another video on this topic when they actually do this shit, which it sounds like it's at least 2 weeks away, maybe 3 or 4 weeks away. Kind of long. So we'll see what you think. Let me know what you guys think. This is a big rant video. I like doing these. So hopefully you guys enjoy this. And we'll be back with regular Mythic Plus stuff coming soon. So stay tuned. We'll see you guys there.